And in fact, if you're fair, you would acknowledge that before the global crisis came along, the Rudd government also delivered a budget that was more than $20 billion in surplus.
Which they did not deliver a budget. They did not deliver a budget outcome. Sure, they told us...
Because the global financial crisis came along.
And they started spending like drunken sailors.
As you would have done.
And the point I make, Kerry, is that $20 billion is a very, very significant outcome.
But when you talk...
And getting $20 billion off the bottom line is surely worth doing.
But when you talk about the massive amount of money overall that this country would have been in deficit, or the government would have been in deficit, 110 billion in revenue that would have happened to you if you'd been in government, plus the 25 to 30 billion that you would have committed to a stimulus program. I mean, is that spending like a drunken... Is 25 to 30 billion not spending like a drunken sailor, but 50 billion is?
Well, $25 billion, that's quite a lot of money, Kerry.
But at what point do you become a drunken sailor is what I'm asking.
What I'm saying is you don't waste money. And this mob...
200,000 unemployed.
They wasted money. It's never right to waste money. And one of the extraordinary things is a Prime Minister who says a bit of waste is neither here nor there. It is always important to treat the taxpayer dollar with respect.
On foreign policy, Mr Abbott, you've said that in month one of an Abbott government, you'd visit the countries in our region. Will you be explaining to Indonesia, Thailand, Japan, China, Korea and others what you meant when you said in a speech last April that the Howard government understood that the Anglosphere was the heart of the Western Alliance, and when you wrote of the region in your book Battle Lines that John Howard ran, quote, a kind of neighbourhood watch scheme in support of Western values? Does sound rather condescending in tone, don't you think? Or perhaps it might to some of our regional neighbours?
And Kerry, look... I'll be explaining to anyone who asks that we have strong alliances and we will nurture and preserve and cherish those alliances, but we also have very strong relationships in our neighbourhood, and it's important that at a very early stage in a new government that we acknowledge our neighbours, and John Howard did that. He flew, as you know, to President Yudhoyono's initial inauguration, and one of the reasons why the former government had such a strong relationship with Indonesia was because John Howard had the foresight to make that trip.
What do you mean by a kind of neighbourhood watch scheme in support of Western values?
We have obviously done the right thing by our neighbours. We've done the right thing in East Timor. We've done the right thing to the extent that we could in PNG. We've done the right thing as far as we can in the Solomons and elsewhere. Australia is a very powerful country in our region, in our neighbourhood, and we have to shoulder the responsibilities that strength brings.
And how easily do you think you can lift the phone to all these countries that you're talking about in the space of a month and line up meetings with heads of states like President Yudhoyono and various other heads of government?
Well, I'll do my best.
In a month?
I will do my best. It is very important with an incoming government, should the public entrust me with the government on the 21st of August, it's very important that a new government make it crystal clear to these countries that we value the relationship, that friendship is more important than headlines. And that's the problem that we've had with Julia Gillard as Prime Minister. It's been all about the headline. It hasn't been about the relationship.
Now, you've promised to produce a tax reform plan within 12 months of forming a government using the Henry Tax Review as the basis. You hint at the possibility that you might adopt the Henry income tax reform suggestion of a tax-free threshold of $25,000, a flat 35% tax rate up to $180,000 and 45% tax rate for the rest, with a 25% company tax rate. I wonder if you've got any idea how many tens of billions that would cost, and also does it mean that you would have to consider replacing the GST with a new consumption tax on business, as Henry suggests, designed to raise much more money than a 10% GST?
Obviously, Kerry, there is going to be a big price tag on these reforms, and that's why what we need to have is a debate, the kind of debate that an intelligent government would have had from last Christmas when the Henry Review was first delivered to the government. What we saw from this government was really an abuse of Ken Henry's work. Of the 138 recommendations, really only one of the serious recommendations was pursued, and it was butchered, and that's the mining tax. And the problem, Kerry, with a government that's addicted to spending is that they are necessarily also addicted to taxation.
Okay.
There will be a destructive mining tax if the government is re-elected, but it won't stop there. There will be a carbon tax, one way or another, either a direct tax or an emissions trading scheme, which will basically be just another cash cow for a bad government.
You've had to defend your coalition candidate, George Christensen, in the North Queensland seat of Dawson today over some stridently anti-Semitic, anti-gay and anti-female comments he either wrote or edited in a university magazine 12 years ago describing women as bloody stupid. There was a joke about a gay man dying of AIDS. How can you defend those sort of sentiments, even if they were a decade ago?
I don't defend them. They're not defensible sentiments. But, Kerry, many of us are guilty of adolescent silliness. Certainly my uni days involved some statements that I wouldn't make today. Julia Gillard's uni days and her days at the Socialist Forum involved statements that she wouldn't make today.
Have you bothered to check with the candidate to absolutely assure yourself? Have you bothered to absolutely assure yourself that none of those sentiments still exist in that man's mind today?
I have got to know George quite well. He is a good candidate, and I know he absolutely repudiates adolescent silliness.
Tony Abbott, thanks very much for joining. I'll look forward to our final interview next week.
I look forward to talking to you again, Kerry.